everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Read Right to Left podcast. I am G from Simply G, joined by my always wonderful co-host Ray from Whimsical Pictures.
Hi everyone.
And this month we are going to be doing a mangaka spotlight. We're going to be talking about this particular creator and the works they've put out, and this month it is Yuhki Kamatani, one that both Ray and I love. Their works are fabulous, and hopefully we can convince you to try reading some of their stuff if you haven't.
Yes.
So we're going to be talking about them, talking about some specific titles from them as well, and of course answering all of your wonderful questions. Thank you guys so much, as always, for sending them in. In addition to all of this, you can now find our podcast on pretty much every podcasting platform, whether that be Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Anchor FM, or as always on YouTube right here on my channel. But rather than spend too long on this, let's get straight into it, and I hope you guys enjoy.
I guess first we can say a little about who Yuhki Kamatani is. I would say it used to be different, but I think right now they're probably most known for Our Dreams at Dusk in the Western fandom. They used to be
I'd agree.
They used to be fairly well known for their ninja series, Nabari no O, which was one of Yen Press's early titles. But I feel like literally nobody knows that series exists anymore. Which is kind of funny, but I know you're a huge fan. I just bought the series and I'm 2 volumes in, so I can't speak that much on it, but we'll be getting into that one as well as some others later. But yeah, Kamatani, beautiful art, very whimsical art, I would say. Really not like anything else. They're known for their, well, particularly in Our Dreams at Dusk, but I would say their other series as well, their portrayal of LGBTQ characters, and specifically characters who don't necessarily conform to the gender binary. I guess something important to note is that Yuhki Kamatani is an Own Voices creator. They are non-binary. They identify as X-gender, which is a Japanese term for being outside the binary, feeling that you can't really fit into the label of male or female, or feeling like you are both. And they are also asexual, aromantic asexual.
Yeah, which gives them a pretty... their personal identity and I assume their personal journey is very formative for a lot of their works. You see a lot of similar themes related to those ideas, as well as more just generalized themes coming from that are reflected in their works quite often. You also see a lot of queer characters within their books. Obviously, Our Dreams at Dusk, but that is not the only title that they have that features queer characters. So, going into it, I think there's something about Kamatani's style, character writing, and just overall message of a lot of their stuff that is so very evidently theirs, very recognizable when you're reading.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I also feel like regardless of genre, because there are several different series, do have different genres, different premises, but you can enjoy the same sorts of things from them, even if you don't inherently expect, or you're not generally a fan of whatever it may be, whether it be their ninja series, whether it be their choral series, or whether it be their LGBT series. You can, if you enjoy certain aspects of one of or more of their titles, you can generally find them in their other works.
Yeah, and I guess the familiarity with their titles in particular, the titles we're going to be talking about and using as a frame of reference today, is I believe that, of course, we have both read Our Dreams at Dusk, the English release from Seven Seas. I have read Shonen Note, which is a series that is not published in English, but should be.
To my great disdain, it is not available in English.
Yeah, it is an 8-volume series about a middle school choir club and a boy who has this beautiful soprano voice who is struggling with, the onset of puberty and the fact that he's soon going to lose that soprano. And then G has read Nabari no O, which is the ninja series, Shonen Ninja series.
Yeah, both their first work and probably their most, well, at least for the two books that we have in English, I think that's the one that suits a more general audience. If you aren't familiar with the creator and you're not looking for a queer title as well, that's one that it's kind of subtly it doesn't really build into that until later, and it's also one that is also the only one of their titles that has gotten an anime adaptation, which I think also helped get the manga licensed in English at whichever point it was, because I don't think it would have gotten licensed otherwise.
Well, considering the Naruto mania, maybe.
Although we've discussed this off the podcast before.
That was a period when
the marketing.
Yeah, the marketing was awful for that series. But also that was a period when like the G fantasy Fujo Shonen thing was also super trendy. Yen Press picked up a bunch of them with like Black Butler and everything. So I feel like it was kind of at the crossroads of a couple of trends, and so some marketing folks kind of read the room about it wrong, I think. But because I definitely had the old the ad for the anime on a couple of my old DVD sets, and it's just like I don't think you guys understood why people liked Naruto. You're trying to sell this to people who like Naruto by telling them it has none of the things that they liked about Naruto. Which is not true.
Certainly. Yeah, it is not true. And also, it's certainly, in a similar sense, I also had many an anime release in my collection, even to this day, that has the old Funimation Nabari no O trailers, and oh yeah, they do not know how to market that series. They definitely go for the Naruto crowd, definitely play up the comedic aspect of it, where it's not that at all. It is a drama. It is a character drama with some action and some tears. You're not going to be laugh out loud, haha, at the ninja hijinks.
As someone who is only 2 volumes into the series right now, I would have played up the ways that its ninja mechanics are different than Naruto's ninja mechanics. I think the fact that it takes place in the real world ends up making for an interesting dynamic. I mean, I made like a funny tweet about just like, imagine if in Naruto just someone just whipped out a gun, but which happens constantly in Nabari no O. But
the entire time.
Yeah. Which is interesting. But so they're still doing all those crazy hand motions and shit, which they, it's kind of taken from Naruto, I suppose. But then somebody will just like whip out a pistol, like shoot you point blank. But yeah, I like that dynamic of having like the two worlds and the dynamic between them, and the fact that you've got like the one lady who was just introduced for me, who's like this, super successful businesswoman, and like all the people she works with their ninja clan are like in a company. That's kind of
the Blue Fog company.
That's not a ninja cover name at all. But I like that aspect of it. It plays with it a lot, I think.
Mm-hmm. And I think it also, by setting it in the quote-unquote current day, which was 2005 at that time, it makes it more grounded, and you do, I feel, get more attached to the complexities of these characters and their situations. The way that this hidden world and the surface world struggle to interact, although they're never able to be completely separate. All of these ninjas have like day jobs. Yeah. They're not just ninjas. Like they gotta
oh my god, you know,
to feed themselves.
So one of the main characters, like the main mentor character, your Kakashi here, is Tobari sensei, and he's like an Eikaiwa teacher, an English teacher. And he makes like these kids who are like under his charge in his ninja club are like constantly trying to beg him for like food or whatever, and he's like, you all are vastly overestimating the amount of money I make. And I feel that deep in my soul every single time. It's like, oof. Boy probably makes more money as a ninja.
Yeah. And they don't even take jobs as ninjas, but he probably is getting a better paycheck.
Yeah, I also like there's a theme within it already that's about how the hidden world, the Nabari no Yo, is kind of on its last legs, and it's something that probably shouldn't have existed this long. A lot of the people within this ninja world feel that, you know, it is only this thing that they're after, which is, you know, the magical secret dark arts thing that lives inside the main character. And like that's the only thing keeping the hidden world around, and there's this general feeling that it's something that shouldn't have survived this long. It's a relic of the ancient world that doesn't fit. And I think that that's an interesting, there's a lot of interesting like thematic perspectives on like the turning of history and the connections between history and the present, and the sort of antiquated systems that still exist that maybe don't have to.
They don't have a place with modern expectation, modern society, and how people and the community interacts with each other. A lot of the, and we will maybe discuss this a little bit later, but one of the villain groups, one of the groups trying to get this Shinrabansho, this art, this power to control all of knowledge and thus become the king of the hidden world, the top ninja, is doing
the
so
Hokage.
Because they want exactly is because of them wanting to positively change the world and society by literally rewriting history, by and wanting almost this social justice and this, but also that being framed as like who really has the power, who should be allowed the power to change the past. Like, should we, there's a lot of really interesting things and elements in this that I think when you do boil it down to like a Naruto, not rip off, but like if people were just comparing it to Naruto, there's two completely different. They're so different.
They're
like,
so
there's
different.
Nothing.
Just from the start, yeah.
There's like, it's just there's ninjas, and there is one character who has like issues with with family betrayal and a sibling that they got to deal with.
I feel like
but that's also handled completely differently.
The basic premise of, like, the main character being, like, super important chosen one who doesn't want to meet because he's got a monster attached to him, and, like, he has to try to become the Ninja King. There's a similarity there that is, like, probably Kamatani was inspired by Naruto, but it's also, like, everything beyond that is completely different.
Well, it's like, if you heard the idea, if you read chapter 1 of Naruto, and then all you got from that was ninjas, and, like, 2 friends, a guy friend and a girlfriend, that's the extent of it. Yes. And maybe kind of a rivalry. I wouldn't, and a teacher and kind of a rival, although we separate the guy friend and the rival character.
Yeah.
Although
that's
they're not even rivals. So.
An interesting relationship. Yeah. I know that's who everybody was shipping back in the day. That was, like, the reason to read Nabari no O was because of these 2 guys. But,
for good reason.
I'm excited, but it's only just begun where I'm at, so... But it's like, yeah, man, these 2 are fucking soulmates. Yoite is interesting.
Because when we talk about Nabari no O, there's really 2 storylines going on. There's this whole skirmish within the ninja world trying to get this, like, magical, power that our main character has. Mm-hmm. And then there's the storyline, which isn't so much a B plot. It's as much of the main story as the actual main story is. Mm-hmm. But it's about his relationship with Yoite and their agreement, their understanding of him literally trying to disappear from this world, and this unusual agreement that they have
to have never been born. Yeah.
It's really, really good, and that storyline kind of finishes at an earlier point than the series finishes, but it does cover the entirety of both of those 2 problems, and they interweave very, very well, because obviously they're both parts of groups that are involved in this larger ninja skirmish war, but that's not really their story whatsoever, because Miharu doesn't really want a part in this struggle for power.
Anything at all.
Yeah. He's not interested in, like, being the ninja king.
He just wants
to live
to
his
meme,
life.
Okay? That's all he wants, is to meme.
To meme, to make okonomiyaki, to, like, hang out with his cat, and just living his life.
The other thing that I think they should have, like, pointed out if they were gonna go the comedic route is, like, the comedy here is very different than Naruto's comedy.
Yes.
In that it's dry as a bone and mostly premised on Miharu being an absolute meme lord. He's so sarcastic. He's such a little shit. They call him, like, a little devil, little demon. And, yeah, I feel like it's great.
Yeah, because he's aware of how he looks and how he acts can influence the other people around him. So he just takes complete advantage of that. And it's like, I mean, hey, if it works, it works. Yep. Don't knock it.
Yep. I love how uncomfortable he likes making his teacher. He's just trying to protect you. You're just trying to skip out on important mission number X.
Well, we never said that Miharu was an easy charge to care for.
He's a cat. He has a cat and he is one. In terms of, like, Yoite, I did read spoilers for the series because sometimes I get a series in Japanese that's quite exposition heavy and I get tired. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll read the synopsis of the plot in English so that I can follow the flow in Japanese better.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. I don't know.
Yep.
Do other people do that? If you do that, tell me in the comments. Bilingual peeps. But, so I read the synopsis. So the thing with Yoite, I guess, from the couple volumes that I've read, and based on, like, the major plot points, I guess, going forward, he's largely the major queer character in the series. He's intersex, right?
Yes.
And, like, has some gender identity struggles based around that, it seems like. But, it's interesting through that lens, because he has, like, multiple things with his body that he's concerned about. He's basically got this, like, forbidden art that he also has in his body that he can just, like, basically explode people's brains, which is pretty sick. It's super violent, and it's really funny that he does it with a finger gun. You know, to each his own. So he wants to have never been born. He wants it to be as though he has never existed, for no one to know who he was, who he is, just every trace of him.
Not just to die, just for every memory, everything of him to disappear.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like, the connection between this intense hatred towards his body he feels with this, Kira is the name of the thing, right? The finger gun death thing.
His power.
That is, like, decaying his body from the inside out, every time he uses it. But then also, like, to have that sort of intertwined with the sort of the stuff that he's faced from his family, etc., for being intersex, and, you know, having this other insecurity about his body intertwined with it is kind of interesting. And I think,
and also it also plays into the family role that he had and why he is with the group he is now as well. Why he chose to follow this path despite not having any kind of background in ninja stuff. He has a very complicated relationship with himself and how people have treated him, how his family's treated him, and where he's found solace, where he's found comfort, and how his own personality plays into not wanting to get close to people because of those insecurities. It's really very well done when you get to sort of the midpoint and later parts of the series.
There's kind of a character like that in each of the Kamatani series I've read, where there's a character who feels that because of something in their personality, there's just something that keeps them from connecting with other people. Whether it's Someone-san from Our Dreams at Dusk, or Machia from Shonen Note, who's, like, kind of there's a couple different female characters in that series, but I guess, like, the main one, we'll get to her in a bit, but I feel, even though obviously his story is much darker than, you know, girl in choir club feels sad sometimes, but I get similar vibes, even early in the series, and I think it's interesting that that's a recurring character for Kamatani, and the one that, you know, at least in the case of Someone-san, matches up the most in terms of labels with Kamatani. You know, it seems they definitely see themselves similarly to Someone-san, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon for, like, a creator to have a particular character type they return to a lot. But it's always interesting to see that sort of recurrence, to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's something that, along with these various shades of how people identify themselves or come to become more comfortable with themselves, that disconnect from other people is something so prominent in their series, in their manga, even if it is sort of the side characters, the not the protagonists, but others, other important characters for the series. And that's something that's always focused on. It's something that's always given
Mhm.
a, I would say, like a pretty weighty look at. It's not just something brushed off or mentioned offhandedly. It's something that gets its own time to be explored throughout these, at least for the two that I've read,
Yeah.
for this series, and how they deal with that, and how, the people around them deal with that, accept
Yeah.
that, bring that into their lives.
Yeah, and I think something that's interesting about it as well is like there's plenty of mangaka who I think, are very have a very disconnected and even misanthropic view of the world that,
Mm-hmm.
they
Mm-hmm.
put into their manga, whether that be like Asano or Oshimi or who have you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think Magician A as well, which I read recently,
Yeah.
um, has this view of like disconnection and disillusionment from other people and an inability to understand other people. But that kind of comes along with this, yeah, almost a perspective that connecting with people on some level is only going to hurt you or isn't worth it or that you're special
Mm-hmm.
for not being
Mm-hmm.
able to connect with them.
The hedgehog's dilemma.
Yeah, the hedgehog's dilemma. Honestly, yeah, Ava as well. Not the Rebuild movies, but original Ava. Rebuild is more of a
Mm-hmm.
commentary on why the hedgehog's dilemma is not the way to be. um,
Yeah.
but something interesting about Kamatani's work is that it is so heavily focused on the importance of human connection and solidarity and love for each other, and that these characters who,
Yes.
like, I'm specifically thinking of Machia and Someone San because I haven't read
Mm-hmm.
much of Yoite yet, but the two of them are both definitely like it's a process of realizing that they connect with other people in a way that's different, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still important to them to have relationships in their
Yeah.
own way. And the other people realize as well that, they love and enjoy having those people in their lives, even if they can't necessarily understand them 100%. And that lack of
Mm-hmm.
understanding doesn't have to get in the way of, you know, their love for each other and wanting to continue to be in each other's lives.
Yoite is exactly the same. Nabari no O would. There's such a focus on the relationship between Miharu and Yoite that without that personal connection, without that one person, and even if it is just one person, that story would be so much lesser. It would not be a story I recommend nearly as earnestly as I do
Mm-hmm.
without that element, without that whole storyline, because it is so integral not only to Yoite but also to Miharu, who
Yeah.
in it completely colors everything that he does throughout the series, both early on and right up until the ending, and it's makes it powerful in a way that is so genuine to, I think, anyone who has human connections with other people, is recognizing that
Mm-hmm.
the people in your life. And there's a really beautiful scene in volume 11 of Nabari, where a character has lost an arm and is suffering from phantom limb pain, right? And it's a larger the whole larger point is that even if something is there, you can feel pain in its absence. Even if you're not aware of something even being missing, just the absence of something in your life can still be painful, even if it doesn't mentally or like logically make sense. And it's just so brilliantly done, which is just another Kamatani is brilliant at bringing simile and metaphor into their artwork, into their storytelling, in a really organic way.
I wanted to mention, because I was just getting excited about this earlier. So I was reading an interview with Kamatani to prepare for this. A lot of the basic ideas in it are actually translated in the anime feminist author spotlight on Yuhki Kamatani, which I definitely super recommend reading.
Yeah, I'll link it in the description of the YouTube video and also on Anchor FM for anyone who's wanting to read it, because it is very good.
Yep, it's really good. Covers all of their works from beginning to the end of Our Dreams at Dusk, and it uses as a major source the interview that I read, so you can find the link to that within the Spotlight article as well. Although it is in Japanese, obviously. I was reading it and got really excited because they cited some of their earliest influences, the things that they were really obsessed with as a teenager, and one of them was boy squires, which I feel like is a recurring theme, not just in literally their manga about boy squires. They're just really into choral music and classical music, and I think that's great. The other one was Motohagio manga, which I was really excited about for obvious reasons. And they said it was really interesting. They obviously they were talking a lot about like their identity and growing up queer, because it was an interview specifically for Our Dreams at Dusk. So they were talking about how those two things, the boy squires and Motohagio manga, kind of, they felt like those works sort of transcended gender in a way, that gender didn't matter so much in them, and that led to them developing this feeling that it was okay to be neither, to be unsure, to be non-binary, outside the binary, basically. And that they came to see those things as their own sort of drop-in center, which I thought was kind of cute. Our Dreams at Dusk, if you don't know, is about a gay teen boy named Tosco who ends up getting outed at school, basically, and he retorts by denying it in a very cruel way, and then feels ashamed of himself, and in a moment when he's like contemplating suicide, he ends up meeting someone-san who sort of gives him a space to air everything that he's been feeling, to just let it out in a not judgmental way. She says, you know, you can tell me anything, but I won't listen. And then she invites him to this drop-in center that she runs. Do they use they them pronouns for someone-san in English? I don't remember.
I believe so.
Sorry. Yeah.
Well, they generally just refer to them by their name, but whenever there's pronouns, I do think it's they them.
Yeah. Okay. I'll use they them as well then. But yeah. So they run like a drop-in center where, you know, you can just kind of go and have a safe space to hang out. There are, just due to circumstances, basically, there are a lot of queer people that hang out around there. But it ends up being sort of this safe haven for Tosku. And it is for all the others as well. So I thought that turn of phrase that they said that their drop-in center was those manga and those spaces in which they felt that, an option outside the binary existed were like their drop-in center. I thought that was... But yeah, they really love Moto Hagio, and I feel like that makes complete sense.
certainly explains a lot.
It's the complicated, layered metaphors, just the way that they like slip, metaphorical imagery so seamlessly in with really any scene. You'll just like have this element. There's a scene in Shonen Note later on where Machia is like, she's like quit the choir club suddenly, and she has like this really dramatic confrontation with Yutaka, who's the main character, because he's so hurt that like she quit the club without telling anyone, and like she won't come back to sing with them again. And it's like a totally sunny day when they're talking like out on the docks, but then suddenly like this storm comes in and there's like rain lashing at them as he's like crying and trying to get her to come back. But of course the storm isn't actually happening. It's a sunny day, but it's reflecting their emotions and like how heightened they are at this point. Which I thought was really interesting.
With Nabari, seeing as a, not to derail the conversation back,
no,
but you see a real progression in art style and art competency, obviously, as their first major work, at least their first serialized work. It starts looking, the first chapters, the first couple volumes looks like a pretty typical, shonen action G fantasy series from 2004, 2005. It looks just like what you would expect.
Pants. Their pants. I drew all of my fucking scene characters in my notebook with those pants. Circa 2005.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. But once I think they feel more comfortable with the story, they feel more confident in their art style and the story that they want to tell, you do see more and more of what we now recognize as Kamatani's art style, of this very evocative, beautiful page spreads and everything else, this metaphor on the page, in so much more. Like I was tweeting earlier in the week about particular panels and particular pages that just absolutely jump out in the later parts of Nabari as being so... I mean, there's one where Miharu is very worried for Yoite, and he's in the hospital, and just this darkness of his shadow, of him, reflecting on this and being very conflicted in helping Yoite to grant his wish of disappearing, but then also Yoite's struggle with wanting to live and not... Again, that whole crisis of who he wants to be and how he wants to live his life, but then that darkness of the shadow merging into this drowning for both of them, for neither of them really knowing the answer and how to get out of this situation. And it's so good.
Oh my gosh, that's
so...
I have so many favorites, but like in Our Dreams at Dusk, like when Taskun is confronting his crush, right? And there's that whole thing where it's like it goes so seamlessly every time they do this. It's so seamless, but it goes from this scene where they're in the classroom talking to each other to like bringing back an image from earlier in the volume. Tsubaki is often Tsubaki is often associated with aliens and spaceships. Which is also because he just really likes ships, which is kind of cute. But like this classroom scenario gradually disappears and becomes that like Tsubaki is floating off on his own in space in this little UFO, and, like, Toskun has to go race through outer space and, like, slam open the door, which I also just, I really love that depiction of just, like, someone who's very obviously trying to isolate himself, and try to, like, bottle all of his shit up because he is sort of questioning his identity, and Toskun makes him feel very, very uncomfortable. And Toskun just, like, you know, coming in and, you know, not just retorting to the hurtful things that Tsubaki has said to him, but also that he's coming into his space and, you know, giving him a way out. So I just I just love it every time they do that. Hagio does the same thing all the time, and I love that so much. It's like, I don't know. I guess it makes sense with how much they're obsessed with choral music, but it really feels kind of like I'm a big musical stan, and it kind of feels like what I like about musicals, where it's like, you know, there's the literal world of what's literally happening in the story, and then there's this heightened emotional world that is this world of metaphor and a place where the characters can very freely express, you know, everything that they're feeling and have it still, like, so seamlessly intertwine with what's literally happening.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect comparison, is that it feels, it doesn't feel fantastical. It doesn't feel like you're being brought out of the story, because it is just as real, just as genuine as the real world that these stories are set in. Even with Nabari, with its, you know, ninja aspect, the fact that it's meant to be current day, it's meant to be, you know, the early 2000s, it never feels like it's disconnected from reality. And so it always, when you do lapse into this more whimsical, this more you know, fantastical make-believe element of this emotional representation on the page, you don't feel like you're suddenly, all of a sudden, like in a completely different setting, a completely different genre. It feels like this is just inherently part of the reading experience, the human experience. Like, if emotions had a shape, it would be this, right? It would be how it is shown in these works, because there's so many ways that our emotions display themselves, but there is very fundamentally something very raw and genuine and personal to them as well. I mean, you mentioning the aliens and the ships aspect of it, even though the whole emotion might be anger, it might be longing, it might be sadness, that it's still tailored to that particular character and to that particular situation or relationship.
You can get across so many different layers too, because it's like you have the very visual anger that he's showing at this point. He's, like, yelling at Toskun, like, just, like, yelling slurs at him. But, you know, the imagery that we see isn't imagery of anger, it's imagery of literally alienation, so that we can see through the visuals that although it's coming out as aggression and bigotry and hatred, what he's feeling at his core is this deep loneliness and this isolation, a lot of it self-imposed, which I feel like you wouldn't get if it was just literally showing him yelling at Toskun. You would just be like, wow, this guy's a bigot. But I feel like with the addition of the alien imagery, the fact that after this all happens, after they've both had a bit of a cool down, they both end up going back to the drop-in center regularly. And they end up being friends. And Tsubaki thanks him and says, you know, I feel like I have a space to figure things out now. I feel like it makes it very obvious that, and I know it's like, it's the trope of like the homophobe who's like secretly gay, but first of all, we don't know if he's gay. He doesn't know. He's still figuring himself out. Yeah, I don't know. It's that imagery that really gives you, at least for me, it was like, he's conflicted on a different level than what he's showing, you know?
And I think also humans are nuanced. There's so much going on under the surface. And comparatively to fiction, where you normally stick to a certain trope, a certain character type, which makes it easier, which makes it easy for readers to attach certain expectations and certain understandings to that character, by having both the real world, the reality of that moment, and the emotional reality coinciding and like existing within that same space. You see how many layers are being utilized with this interaction and with the story as a whole.
And honestly, Our Dreams at Dusk has, like, just in general, like, its portrayal of people is so complicated. Like, there's multiple characters throughout the series who, like, definitely have strong prejudices. From Tsubaki to his father, to Toskun himself, to Miss Deadname, whose actual name I forget. That's what I remember her for, is being infuriating. So, but it's like the series, even her, it's like, I feel like the reason that she hurts so much to a lot of readers is because she means so well. And that's a very real kind of bigotry to meet. Not everyone is like just like hurling slurs in every direction. Not everyone's wearing a MAGA hat or whatever. Or I guess the Rising Sun flag. Especially here, there's not a whole lot of like overt homophobic violence, but there is a lot of that kind of very basic ignorance. So, but it's like, I appreciate that, like, there's layers to her, right? She genuinely does want Utsumi to be happy. She just has this idea for how he can be happy, and this idea of who he is. But we see how it's not necessarily because he's queer, but that she does that to everyone. You know, she does it to her daughter. She does it to everyone else. She does it to the other ladies at the, like, the ladies' lunch that she organizes, and everybody else is like, oh, yep, that's her. So,
well, it's the good intention of the just totally unaware, right? It's the...
And the fact that, like, first of all, Utsumi is not, like, he's not a super militant person. He'd rather just kind of exist as a man and be understood as a man and not have to deal with, you know, he's the kind of person who, it's like, I don't think he thinks about his transness that often. It's been a long time since he transitioned. He's like, I'm just living my life. And then you come in here. And he, like, he's a very gentle person. He doesn't want to, like, he recognizes her good intentions and he doesn't want to tell her off. But I think he also recognizes that she's not the kind of person who he can change. And that's sometimes the most exhausting thing of all.
Even more so because it's coming from a previous friendship. It's coming from someone although they haven't seen each other for a while, at some point they were very close, right?
Yeah.
And you'd want... And again, this friend, she's not inherently trying to do... Like, she's not bigoted in the way that, you know, blatant homophobes are. She is trying to, I guess, understand the situation in a way that's familiar to her, but it's just so uninformed and so ignorant and so also like very self-focused, selfish almost.
We have to let people know about your disorder. It's totally different from being a homosexual.
And you're
Natsumi-chan!
And again, and Utsumi, like, you know that he knows that as well, but it's that almost a betrayal of a friend just not listening to you, not caring about who you are enough to not want to, like, actually listen when you're talking, like saying, hey, shut up, don't say that, or like, don't. And so it's that, again, personal struggle that as human beings, like, regardless of your identity, like, we come across those people all of the time. Like, there's always someone in your life that just doesn't get you, and they might mean well, but they just go about it so wrong. And it's something that obviously comes up a lot more for those who are within the LGBT community, but anyone. It can be racial, like a racial thing, it can be a nationality thing, just anything that people, they might want to be, like, helpful and friendly and understanding, but they just do not understand why they are doing it not well. Like, they're doing it wrong.
And people, like, describe this woman as, like, fake woke. But I feel like there's different kinds of fake woke. I think she thinks she wants Utsumi to be happy. But ultimately, it's coming from a place of selfishness. And the overall message of the work is that sometimes people are complicated, and sometimes you're not going to understand them. And it's okay to be in that space of not understanding, as long as you're coming at them, you know, person to person, and respecting their journey and respecting who they are, which is where she gets it wrong, where she's like, you know, no, I have to understand Utsumi. I have to understand everything about him right now. In fact, I'm going to tell him how his life is. And it's like, if you just slow down and listen to him, then maybe you would start from a place of confusion, but, you know, you would be starting from a place of respect, which is so much more important. And you could, through that respect, come to a place of more understanding, rather than starting from a place of superiority, really.
Thinking that you know what's the best solution for this.
Lord,
more so than the person themselves.
You know, I'm not trans, but nobody understands more than trans people, like, other people thinking that they know your life better than you know your own life. Like, God, can't even imagine.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of What Did You Eat Yesterday, from Yoshinaga's manga, and with the mother. Going to, like, all of these support groups because her son's gay, but, like, she doesn't, like, she's like, oh,
I went to this fantastic seminar about gender identity disorder. Like, that's great, Mom, but I don't have gender identity disorder.
Mom, I don't have that. I am just a man who loves other men. Like, that's all you gotta deal with. I'm not I don't have gender identity disorder. I don't have this, that, and you're also not. Don't wait for me to get, like, grow out of it and get married and have kids, because that's also not happening.
Also, gender identity disorder is no longer in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual.
Yeah. But it's like, as his mother, she wants to understand him and, like, support him and this, that, whatever else, but she doesn't actually listen to her son. And for a long time they were very estranged because they didn't get along with the fact that he, you know, his partners were men, and so there's a lot of tension when he does start to finally bring his boyfriend to his, like, to meet his family. So, and that's that step of, like, actually breaching that topic and coming into this at that person's level, rather than just like assuming that I've gone to this talk and I've gone to this support group and I've part of this Facebook group of other mothers, that what the situation is.
Yeah, it's and I like that whole thing ends up being kind of a wake up call for Tasakun. In he had in the previous volume sort of a mirror situation where, as a gay cis guy, he was like trying to be sort of a mentor to this younger person named Misora, who is assigned male at birth and lives as a boy everywhere except in the drop-in center, where they wear girls' clothing, feminine clothing. And for Misora, they're figuring a lot of things out. They don't know how they feel. They kind of feel like they don't necessarily want to be a girl, but they definitely don't want to be a boy. So it's like they're really trying to figure themselves out. And Toskun just like comes in and he's like, "Oh, so you're like a trans girl?" And Misora's like, "No, I don't know what's going on."
I am 11. Please don't assume my life. No. I'm still figuring all this out. I am in the 6th grade. I do not. Yeah. Please, no.
Not to say that plenty of people aren't totally aware of their gender at a young age. But for Misora, they're definitely like
aware of their gender.
And like it's not necessarily binary, Tasakun. So he kind of forces them into a situation that makes them extremely uncomfortable, and they end up running away from the drop-in center. And Tasakun doesn't see them again until the end, when he's able to have sort of an apology moment there. But I don't think he would have gotten to that point if he hadn't have had this wake-up call with this woman. Who is a more exaggerated version of what he was doing to Misora, which is trying to assign labels to them that they didn't want, that didn't fit them, because he selfishly wanted to understand everything about them. And he was coming at it from this place of superiority, as wanting to be a mentor to this child. When, he's cis. Like, where do you get off, boy? Maybe just, like, be there for them,
And it's also important that I think that it was the protagonist that did that. A character whom is framed and who, as a reader, we are understood to, like, obviously have had his own struggles and is dealing with his own issues of identity and acceptance. And we know that, with this friend, this Ms. Dead name, and like with the mother in What Did You Eat Yesterday, he wasn't, like, he's not a bad kid, and he wasn't trying to be bigoted, he wasn't trying to do something cruel to Misora, but it ended up being that way. And even if you are within the community, even if you are having your own personal struggles, you can't assign your own experiences to other people. So, and I think that was a really important aspect of, just because you're in the community, the queer community, doesn't mean you know everything about being queer either.
There's actually, there's a great moment in Shonen Note, which has a couple of non-binary characters later in the series. There's one named Mito, who is in the choir club, and they are assigned female at birth, and they're feeling very conflicted about, obviously, the onset of puberty is a big theme within the series, and for them, they desperately wish that their voice could change, They want to sing the bass part in the choir club, and they really hate their high voice. And they hate wearing the girl's uniform. And then there's also Yutaka's brother, his older brother, who is kind of... He's an interesting one. He's like this world traveler, who... I don't know, he's like one of those kids who, like, gets out of college and is like, I'm gonna backpack around Europe. Yeah, he's that kind of person. He just kind of goes wherever the wind takes him, you know? He's very free-flowing.
Free spirit.
And he dresses very bohemian. And he carries a flute everywhere he goes. And he only shows up at home on his terms whenever he feels like it. And then he's off again. He doesn't really fit within the binary. He uses one kotoba, which is like a way of talking that's usually associated with... It's very exaggeratedly feminine, and it's usually associated with drag queens and trans women. He also, like, he wears skirts whenever he feels like it. Sometimes he doesn't, sometimes he does. And he's someone who, like, he also had a really beautiful soprano before he hit puberty, and after he hit puberty, he stopped singing, and now he plays the flute instead. And he has an interesting conversation with Mito that's, like, it's very short, very brief, but, like, Mito's sees him wearing a skirt, and they're like, so do you want to be a girl or something? And he's like, what if I do? What would you do? And he's just like, what is it about me that made you think that? And they're like, I mean, you're wearing a skirt and you talk like a girl. And he's like, so? That makes me a girl? You know? And it's, like, interesting to see, like, Mito being very stuck in this kind of binary thinking. Whereas Minoru's just like, you know, I'm just following this vibe, man. Come or don't, I don't care. Like, binary, what's that? But I think that's an interesting look as well, where it's like you can see someone who, even someone who feels very trapped by this idea of the gender binary, finds themselves trapped in this binaristic thinking. And that's a bit of a wake-up call for them as well. So, which I don't think Minoru meant it to be. I think he was just like, eh. He's just vibing. That's all he does. He just vibes. I also like that Mito's the only one who ever comments on the way that he talks. Nobody else does. They just kind of accept that that's how he is. I kind of like that.
Yeah, refreshing, I think. When certain elements like that are not like the forefront of a character, they're not what the other characters only see them as. I think that's something else that, I mean, aside from Our Dreams at Dusk, which obviously is about the queer community and acceptance and finding yourself and being secure in yourself, the queer characters in Kamatani's works, or at least with Nabari no O, and I would presume Shonen Note, it's not the only thing, and even in Our Dreams at Dusk, that's not like their only personality trait. It's not the only thing that makes them them. But obviously that story is about, like, it's about the LGBT experience. Whereas Nabari no O, it's just something that exists as part of the story, as part of these characters, and it's not made a huge deal out of unless it has, you know, some sort of other plot relevance to, you know, contextualize something else. But it's not the only thing that matters, and it's not the only shtick for that character, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, for sure.
Which makes them a lot more interesting. And obviously it makes these stories just a general story. Like, you can recommend these to anyone who aren't looking for like an LGBT focused story. Nabari no is great for anyone who likes action drama ninja stories. And Shonen Note, I'd say, if you're a fan of,
musicals, choral music, sports anime. Yeah. It has all of the sports manga things. All of the sports manga beats are hit so brilliantly in this. I have never wanted to be a 14-year-old in a fucking Japanese middle school club more than when I was reading Shonen Note. Every beat is just like, ugh.
For me, it makes it that Kamatani isn't just like you read their manga for LGBT, like, own voices works, right? You read them because they're great, and they also just so happen to be own voices, feature really well done queer characters, and very nuanced discussion and depictions of queer issues.
Yeah.
It's more than just like, what is, the current trend of LGBT and identity and personal memoir stuff that we are seeing more and more in English.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's refreshing to, like, be able to go into an author's work and just, like, expect that there's going to be really cool queer representation. But also, like, the primary thing that both relates to the queer stuff and just doesn't is just, like, a more broad, like, worldview thing that I connect with so much with Kamatani is, like we've been saying, it's just their acceptance of ambiguity and not being sure. Like, in both Shonen Note and in Our Dreams at Dusk, and even what I've read of Nabari no O, I would say, there is just, like, this idea that the world is big and complicated, and it's okay to just kind of be figuring it out as you go. Like, that's still a valid way to be a person, and I think that's...
And even if you don't figure it out, you're not invalid. You're just you. You're just, what...
Yeah. It's, you don't have to have everything figured out in order for your life to have meaning and your relationships with people to be worth something. In some level, we're all just constantly in a state of confusion and flux. And that's okay.
You got that right.
That's okay, and that's valid, and you should accept that about yourself. I really like that message, and it's shown up in all of the stuff that I've read from them so far, and I don't see enough of it, and I enjoy it. So
in short, read Kamatani's manga. It's really, really good.
It's really, really good. And beg for Shonen Note every chance that you get.
Yep.
I put it on every 7 Seas survey.
Wave.
I need to figure out how to beg Kodansha because I'm worried they might be sitting on it because it is a Morning 2 series. But, give it to me in English so that I can throw it at people.
I want to read it. I want to own it. I would also, just as an aside, like to own their Buddhism icon sculptor manga, which we haven't even mentioned, and neither of us have read. But it's never going to get licensed because nobody is interested in it except for me. But I want it. I want it, and it sounds interesting. And I've heard it's good from people who can actually read it. But yeah, I mean, that's even more of a shot in the dark because,
it's like super Buddhist, right? It's like super
Yeah.
Buddhist. And
Yes.
it's like, it's about, you know, a traditional Japanese craft. And it's like fantasy, but it's not like swords and dragons fantasy. So
I think there's body swapping or body sharing at least. Like, I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know anything about it except for that the guy sculpts Buddha, and that's it. It's set in the 12th century, which is also like not an interesting period of Japanese history, quote unquote. Like, it doesn't have the same
Fuck
allure
you.
that like other periods do.
I like that era.
Yeah, well, so do I, but like comparatively to what a lot of historical fiction is set in Japan, it's not that period, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I want it. I want it, and there's 5 volumes. I think it's ongoing. I think it's also on hiatus. Yeah. I want it. Me throwing my fit.
I would take it. But I want Shonen Note first.
Well, of course. That's the one that I actually put on all of the licensing surveys because that one has a chance. The other one doesn't.
Yeah, doesn't. Should I tell people it has a Yurio in it?
Yeah.
It has a Yurio in it. It's just Yurio except he sings. He's a couple years younger, but there you go. If you like Yurio, you'll love Shonen Note.
And who doesn't love Yurio? Let's be real. That boy.
He's got the same character design too. The European brat character design. He's got it. Should we answer some questions?
Absolutely.
All right, we got a few. First we have from Paula at at Lesbopyhemus. I'm sorry. What is your favorite work from Kamatani and why? Is the first question. G?
It's hard, and I don't want to... I haven't read Shonen Note, and that's something that definitely, like, appeals to me on multiple levels, and from everything I've heard from both you, Ray, and others, I know that I will love it. That's hard because I love all of their series for different reasons, and I would recommend them for different reasons. I think Our Dreams at Dusk is the most pure of them. Probably the most representative of their work and who they are and their own larger themes that they like to tackle and like to incorporate into all of their works. And is one of their is their most recent series, aside from the Buddhist one, which is technically still ongoing, but it's their most recent series, so it's also their most polished series, quote unquote. Yeah. But I love Nabari in all of its like odd, like weird ways as well. I can't choose. Yeah. They're both my babies.
Yeah. See, it's hard for me because Our Dreams at Dusk, I think, is, again, the most polished of their work. I think it's the most perfect. I think I gave every single volume 5 stars. Using the Goodreads thing, which I use to keep track of my reading. Shonen Note is like, most of the volumes were a 4, and then a couple of them were 5s. So it's like, in terms of rating, technically I should give it to Our Dreams at Dusk, I guess. But, in terms of just, like, which one is calling from the depths of my heart in the current moment, y'all don't understand how much I love musicals. So oh god, I love Our Dreams at Dusk. I love it. I cry just thinking about it, but I'm gonna give the edge to Shonen Note just because it is subject matter that, again, I just, like, I cannot emphasize to you people enough how much I love musicals. And choral music. And, yep. So I guess I'm gonna go with Shonen Note, even though I technically think that Our Dreams at Dusk is better and tighter. You know, if I had to name a favorite child, it would probably be Shonen Note, just by a hair. Just by a hair.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Next question, same person. Do you think that Our Dreams at Dusk should have been longer? Could it use more volumes, or is it good as it is? I think 4 volumes is perfect for it. I think everything that it left open was left open with a purpose. I know some people were, like, really wanted, like, more from Misora or Tsugaki, and I think that's valid, but for me, I think Kamatani was trying to do something very particular by keeping their journeys open. So, a lot of people want more from Someone-san as well, but I feel like the whole point of Someone-san's character is that being hard to grasp kind of is who she is, and that's valid. Yeah. So, I feel like the frustration that you feel, if you feel any frustration towards Someone-san as a character, I feel like that's kind of intentional. So, I like the length.
Yeah, I totally agree that I feel like with everything, not just manga, but everything, you want to leave your audience wanting more, not like it's overstayed its welcome, right? And I'm not saying that giving Our Dreams at Dusk another volume would have, you know, overstayed its welcome, but it's not necessary. It really, as you said, Ray, like, there's very intentional choices there as to which characters were covered and which situations were covered as well, versus exploring every minutia and every niche of these characters' lives and their personal journeys. It's kind of antithetical to some of the other larger messages in not just Our Dreams at Dusk, but all of their works. So I would much rather, as a reader, having something end and being satisfied with it, but, you know, having that feeling of like, oh, I wish we had more of these characters. I want to see how this goes, rather than like, oh my god, I'm so sick of, like, okay, we get it. Like, these are these characters. We know, like, why are we doing this again? I mean, I'm just piggybacking off of your answer here, right? But, like, we're in agreement, because I don't think that it needed to be, or even should have been, any longer than it was. I think it did what it needed to perfectly and wrapped it up in a way that satisfied readers to the extent that it was supposed to, and left them wanting more to the extent that it was supposed to.
Yeah.
So.
And I think it came in, it said what it wanted to say, and kind of got out. And I appreciate that very much. It's an easy one if I wanted to have it, like, in a classroom. 4 volumes is a very nice length for that. It's great as a title you can recommend to people who maybe don't read that much manga, because, you know, you don't want to be, like, recommending Naruto over here. You know, it's like, it's definitely a title that I appreciate how short it is, because it is something that I want many people outside of the manga fandom to read. So it's convenient for that as well, I think.
Yeah, that's a great addition, is that it's an accessibility thing, which I think some people may forget as well when we do talk about manga, because we're so used to things being longer, that if you're wanting to recommend this to people who don't read manga, don't read comics, like, it's way easier to push on a series that's 3-4 volumes than, you know, even 14, which Nabari is. So, or Shonen Note at 8, it's a lot more palatable, and people will buy all 4 volumes at once, or they will buy, you know, it's not a huge investment. So if you're wanting to read it, you can just get it and have it all and read through it quickly as well. It's something that can be read in an afternoon.
Yep.
Although you might want to pace yourself because it hits hard.
Oh god, yeah. I reread it last weekend, just all of them in a day.
Oof.
Next question is from Takuto at Takuto Anime Cafe. Thanks for your questions, as always. Our Dreams at Dusk is beloved for its representation of the LGBT community beyond just gay individuals. What part of the gender and or sexuality spectrum would you have liked to see further represented, either in this work, future LGBT manga works, or both?
I do wish that we saw more asexual representation just in general. One of the titles that I recently reviewed for Irodori Sakura was one focusing on asexuality. It's obviously a identity that doesn't get a huge amount of representation, or at least not serious representation, even within a lot of queer spaces. And although I'm not asexual myself, I do have many friends who are, and it's something that even within the queer community isn't taken seriously. It's not even accepted a lot of the time. Like, it's just bigotry within the community as well as outside of the community. Like, so more positive asexual representation just generally. Also, I mean, this is not within this we don't have it within Our Dreams at Dusk, but I also like seeing trans girls just in general, positive representation, more of those, please. And trans boys, trans children, all of these trans characters. I love them and I care for them deeply, and I hope that they get better representation in more manga. And we're seeing it now with stuff like Love Me for Who I Am, with non-binary representation, and that's an interesting kind of comparison to Our Dreams at Dusk and sort of the sexualities and genders that they have in that manga comparatively to what is in Our Dreams at Dusk, and how those are handled. We're seeing it more and more, but I'm never going to complain about more good representation. but both of those two series in particular are doing similar but different things, and that's important to keep in mind as well when we discuss it. But they're both good.
For me, I mean, rereading the bits with Utsumi, it's like, I also just happened to be complaining about Tokyo Ghoul to a friend last weekend and how bad its treatment of its trans male character is in Re. But it's just thinking about it and realizing that Utsumi is the only trans male character in manga I can think of who I don't have major issues with. So, and I do like how many defab and intersex trans male, trans mask characters that Kamatani writes, and I think I will be happy the more however many characters like that they want to write. I am so sold. We need so many more trans boys, trans mask people, defab, non-binary people. They get so erased within the discourse all the time. And of course we need more trans girls, but it's at least I can name a few offhand that I like, that don't make me grind my teeth. So and it's the fact that we're not even to that lowest of bars with the trans men in manga is oh god. So I always want to see that more just in manga in general. In terms of Kamatani stuff, I think it'd be nice to see an allo romantic asexual character, or an asexual character in a relationship. Because Someone-san is someone who's very aloof, and I think that is a character that rings very true for Kamatani to their own experiences, but, you know, I would like to see different kinds of asexual people in different kinds of relationships shown, I think. And then, it's another thing where it's like, it seems to be something that's very true to Kamatani's own experience. Based on the interview I read, they were talking about, you know, feeling, you know, that this ambiguity for them and, you know, not necessarily having to put a label on their identity is very important. But,
yeah.
I think that, you know, just in terms of the non-binary people that I know in my own life, there's some who are like that, where, you know, they'd rather not put a very strict label on it, and they just go by the umbrella term of non-binary, or ex-gender. But then I also know people who, you know, how they identify to them is very set and is, you know, very specific to them, and their labels that they use for it are very important to them. I think I'd like to see more non-binary characters who very proudly use terms like non-binary or gender fluid or agender, bigender, multigender, what have you, ex-gender, and, you know, are, like, very upfront, like, hello, this is me, this is how I identify, nice to meet you, you know, because I think that I definitely know people like that, and, you know, their experience is just as valid as someone who feels like their identity is a little more fluid or ambiguous.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the bisexual representation, where it's like, okay, I'll take the stuff that's like, I don't like labels, but it's like, I'd also like some out and proud bisexual characters who are like, hi, I'm bi, nice to meet you. So, yeah, I guess that's how I feel. There's no bi people in our dreams at dusk. More bi people.
No, there's not. More bi people.
Next question is from Stories on Shelves at Storied Shelves. Thanks for your questions always. 3 questions from them. First one is, who are some of your favorite characters from their works? Let's see. For me, I love the Yurio. I love Vladimir from Shonen Note. He is a brat, and I like that. There's also a girl in Shonen Note. I love everybody in Shonen Note. Everybody who makes up this little choir club, plus Vladimir, who is sometimes there, because he's like a world-famous singer or whatever. He's so funny. He just, like, shows up. He's like, I took a plane. Why are you here? Because I'm rich. I go where I want.
Do not question why I'm here. Just be happy that I am here.
You came to see Yuta-kun. No, I didn't.
Shut up. No, I didn't.
Just gonna take a plane back to Russia if that's how you're gonna be. So he's great, and I love him, and I love everything about him. I also love, oh god, I love everybody. I love Issei, who, her arc made me cry. She's a very shy girl, in the club, who at the beginning of the series, like, you know, she's someone who, like, she's got a lot of opinions, but she's so socially anxious that she just, like, thinks them in her head, and she gets, like, all frustrated because she just can't get them into words, you know?
Yeah.
And, for her, like, the freedom of being in the choir club is that, you know, she has these set songs that she can memorize, and then she can express herself through just letting out the lyrics that have become muscle memory for her. And I definitely connect with that in terms of my own singing. And so I love her dearly. She's so cute. And watching her, like, get more confident in herself throughout the series is so good. I love Tomoya, who is, like, he's the same age as everybody else. He's, like, 13. But he's so tall. And, like, you know, that growth spurt hit real early for him. And his voice is deeper than the other kids. And it's like he's dealing with this disconnect between the way that the world treats him as someone who looks like he's already in high school, and the way that he feels inside, which is very much a kid. And, like, he's got some rough home life stuff going on, but it's like he's such an open and friendly person. He was the first person to reach out to Yuta-kun, and he's just so cute, and I love everybody. And I also love Daichi from Our Dreams at Dusk, because she's me. I like that she's very strong-willed and political. I appreciate that type of character. I feel like we don't get a lot of characters in manga who are, and it's kind of a reflection of the culture here, but we don't get a lot of characters who are just, like, very outspokenly political, and I like that about her. She cute too. What about you, G?
I would say, I mean, I love my boys Miharu and Yoite. They're good. Also, shout out to the smallest side character, Hanabusa, in Shonen Note. Nabari no. Love her. She's just living her life, being the sweetest, most loveliest. Also, paleontologist, like, oh,
yeah, hell yeah,
girl, I wish I was her. I, like, if I'm 40 and living my best life as a paleontologist with my handsome younger boyfriend, girl, you got a maid. Like, and also she's just like, she's definitely the mother character, I guess, she's the most maternal of the characters in that particular series.
G has big mom friend energy and also enjoys characters with big mom friend energy.
I mean, stop exposing me like this on the podcast, right?
I mean, my brand is chaos, and I like characters who are also chaos, so...
So yeah. I mean, I love my boys. They're great. I mean, Nabari no has a whole range of fantastic characters, good and bad, or on the good side and the bad side, I should say. Shonen Note I haven't read, but I want to so bad. And you describing those characters, my heart grew another 3 sizes.
They're so cute.
Incorporate all of those characters.
They're so
into
wonderful.
My life. Oh, you make me want to read it even more, as if I wasn't, like, clamoring for it already.
I need more people to talk about Shonen Note with. If you've read Shonen Note, comment below.
And for Our Dreams at Dusk, again, a lot of really wonderful characters, a lot of really nuanced characters. I really like Utsumi. I think he's great, and I think his whole storyline is really well done, and not... I mean, it's a very important and, you know, difficult style of telling this sort of story, but it's done with a lot of care, not just for him, but for, like, just that general well-intentioned but just not done right, the reality of the situation. But I also love Chaiko, the old man who plays the records.
Yes.
Oh, okay. He stole my heart and broke it and healed it all at once. I sobbed. I sobbed.
Mm-hmm.
I
Oh my
sobbed. But
god.
I also really like his character because he's an elderly gentleman. You know, he's in his
Mm-hmm.
60s, 70s. And it's nice having such a positive portrayal of queer people in the later stages of their life, who isn't like a teenager just figuring stuff out, or even as like a
Mm-hmm.
20-odd-year-old who is like more secure or like coming to terms with being, you know, getting their life together in the more typical sense. He's older, he's grown close, like he's grown with his partner who he cares, and he has a lot of struggles that are unique to being like in the later stages of your life.
Specifically to
And
being
but still,
gay in the later stages of your life as well.
yes, yeah, which again like ties similarly in a similar sense to What Did You Eat Yesterday, because those characters are in their 50s, and a lot of chapters are focused on, you know, being gay and being in your 50s. But oh, it's so good. It's so good, and he's such a lovely, sweet grandpa, and I,
And he's got a
yeah,
Tchaikovsky for everything.
exactly, exactly, and he's like in it for that story in particular. Again, like the whole focus is about finding people who understand you and community and support, but more than anything, Chaiko-san is the mentor. Like he knows can show that like things will turn out okay, even like as long as you stay alive. Basically, you
Mm-hmm.
can be happy, can be fulfilled. Way like decades into your life. You know, it's and things will be hard and not everything's going to turn out perfectly, but it doesn't mean that, you know, you should give up on it or that things won't ever change, even because a lot of his story, like he didn't get together with his partner until later in life because of social pressures and all
Mm-hmm.
sorts of, you know, things like that. But it didn't mean that he he lost his chance. It didn't mean that he wasn't able to reunite with the or
Mm-hmm.
find someone who he cared about later. And I think that's also really important as well. Like just because, you know, things don't work out for you, or just because, you know, the odds are stacked against you at one point, that it's not going to be the same your whole life. And the more we go into the future, the more things socially will change for queer people especially. So hopefully, you know, fingers crossed, we head forwards, not backwards. um
Oh god.
but but I think it's really wonderful having this very positive portrayal of elderly queer person.
I appreciate that Chaiko, like, he doesn't necessarily, like, not have anything to learn from the younger generation. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he has the whole thing with his partner's son, and, you know, like, he almost, like, isn't able to see his partner in his partner's last moments because of this nervousness that he has about his partner's family. Um, and, you know, he gets encouragement both from that son and from the people at the drop-in center, and I really appreciate, like, that exchange of ideas, that exchange of, like, love between generations,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
of the queer community in particular. Um, you know, and that it kind of goes both ways, you know.
Yeah.
Second question from them is, what are some of your favorite elements or aspects of Kamatani's art style? Um, we talked about a lot of the things that I think we love about it.
Mm-hmm.
Something for me that I didn't really bring up is just that in Shonen Note in particular, it has, you know, the added complexity of having to portray musical numbers within a purely visual medium that has no motion or sound. And I really, really love how Kamatani portrays music in the series with, like, you know, the characters singing and, like, motifs from the music swimming in the background, and it's just, like, I can't even describe it, but I love the way that they draw the lyrics as well. You see this a little bit in Our Dreams at Dusk with, there's some songs and stuff in that one. But, it's all throughout Shonen Note, where it's like characters will just be humming along to a song that they're working on, or, you know, it'll just be, like, playing, because Yuta-kun's thing is that he's very, very sensitive to sound, and he hears a lot of, like, the sounds, just the normal sounds of the day as almost like this kind of music, and it'll remind him of, like, choral music that he knows, and he'll start singing it. Vladimir also has synesthesia, so we see some cool visual elements with that.
Stop making me want to read Shonen Note even more. Oh my god.
I can't help it. We're doing a podcast about Yuhki Kamatani. But, yeah, so it really does feel kind of like, even though it's about choral music and not, like, musical music, there's opera in it, but it does kind of feel like reading a musical. So, yeah, it makes me happy. Is there anything you wanted to add to, like, our earlier discussion about the art?
I think I said most of my piece. I will say that there is, like, this isn't anything in particular with their style, but there is a scene later on in, again, it lends itself to how well matched the imagery used to the emotions present is done in Kamatani's manga. But there's a scene in volume 9 or 10 of Nabari no, that is a direct, I don't know if it's even necessarily a scene in the manga, but the image, the picture on the front, like the color page of the manga, is directly evoking what I, like, for me at least, it reminded me immediately of Night on the Galactic Railway, which is not only hugely well known and influential in of itself, but also very relevant to what is going on in that scene. And it's my god, yeah. So anyway, it made me cry. Like, nothing sad necessarily happened, but, like, it's preparing you for certain things, and then even though you know when certain things are going to happen, you're not prepared. Like, even though you're prepared, you're not prepared. But that almost visual language is just so well incorporated to things that aren't even necessarily, you know, they're not unique ideas. Obviously, Night on the Galactic Railroad is a classic. Like, everyone in Japan knows that, but it's purposeful to evoking that with reason. And I think that aspect of their, and I can't think of any particular examples of that straight off the top of my head for it when in Our Dreams at Dusk, but in Nabari there's a couple things like that, and it makes me feel like they know exactly what they're doing with their artwork, which you'd hope from an artist, but nothing is filler. Nothing feels like it's just there to look pretty. It's not, you know, a mindless sort of aesthetic. It's purposeful.
Yeah, there's for Our Dreams at Dusk, I feel like it's more If you look up like the Tchaikovsky numbers that they're using, they're a lot
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes connected to what's going on, obviously, but also I
Mm-hmm.
feel like the scenery, the setting, which is very close to home for Kamatani. They were born and raised in Hiroshima Prefecture. Our Dreams at
Mm.
Dusk takes place in Onomichi, which is about an hour train ride outside of Hiroshima proper. Um,
Mm-hmm.
really famous for ramen. And actually, if you look at the credits in the back of the volumes, they credit multiple sources for the research in the series, and it seems that they did have someone from the tourism board of Onomichi, um, uh, who was working with them on the series in terms of, I guess, making Onomichi look like a place everybody wants to go. But it's successful. It made me want to go to Onomichi, so uh, but like the use of the famous cycling road over the water, um,
Mm-hmm.
that's a very iconic 2-page spread there. The use of all the hills and that like observatory up at the top, the shipyard. I feel like that stuff is used very expertly. That imagery is used very expertly throughout the series. It really feels like it is set in Onomichi specifically. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a love for just like the local area, obviously as well with like the cat clutter, the old houses that they're
Mm-hmm.
rebuilding, which are you know not a subtle metaphor, um, but a good metaphor. Uh, you know what? I I love musicals, and as someone who loves musicals, I don't think that things that aren't subtle are worse because they're not subtle, okay? Miss me with
Yeah.
that. In Shonen Note, obviously it's the use of the songs more so than anything else. Um,
Yeah.
the There's a couple different operas that show up throughout it. The main one is The Turning of the Screw, and Yuta-kun's big solo number in that is a song called Malo Malo, which, if you look it
Mm-hmm.
up, is so beautiful. Like, wow, that's hard. That's a hard song to sing. I sure can't get that high.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also just like the context of the song within that opera and the story of the opera is so having to do with like the loss of childhood and the loss of innocence and this weird transient period of adolescence that the series is all about, as well as just like the integration of all the choral numbers from the choir club, which are all like really famous, like kind of school choir type of songs in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
So it was fun to like look those up on YouTube and listen to them and see how they were used in the context of the story. So I think they're really good at just like pulling in references from just like things that they like and making connections to what's going on in the story in general.
Yeah.
Oh, there's also a really good reference to the Little Prince in Shonen Note, which is
That sounds like it. That sounds like on brand for that. That would. I mean, that suits it. From everything I've heard.
um. So yeah, I agree with their choice of like references to other media, and like I think they're very good at that. Which is something Hagio is
Mm-hmm.
also very good at. So you can see
Mm.
the similar strengths between their works. Last questions from Stories on Shelves is: are there story elements you wish could have been explored more in any of their series?
Nothing jumps out to me in particular. I think, like we were talking about before, I think the stuff that isn't covered is very purposefully done. So things are left open ended in a way that are supposed to be like it. You come to your own conclusions, or you come to the idea that not everything is going to wrap up in a pretty little bow at the end of the story, and that's okay. That's some things are a process, whether that be, you know, personal identity stuff, whether that be for Nabari, grief is a huge huge theme in that, and that's it's important to, like, it's covered, but you're not ultimately going to end with like, and then everything was okay and we never had to think about any of this again, and this is the end of the story, and yeah, that's it, that's everything. Yeah, nothing in particular. I mean, people, you can always make the argument that like certain side stories or whatever in Nabari, because there's a lot of characters, there's a lot of side elements, and, you know, little things here and there that like make up the greater story. Some people may want to focus on what's his name, Koichi, and some people may want to focus more on Raime and her brother, you know, those sorts of things. But I don't see it necessary as what is covered in the story is sufficient, and if you focus too much on those other little bits, you'll lose the honed focus of the main storylines, which are ultimately the more important stuff.
In Shonen Note, there's a couple. I mean, it similar to Nabari, just having so many characters. Shonen Note is about an entire choir club, so there's definitely some characters who I would have been happy if we'd have gotten more about. Mito in particular stands out. I feel like we only really got their story right towards the end, so I would have liked a little bit more from them. Is there anyone else? Midori's story towards the end, there's like a gap year in it, and I kind of would have liked a little more context to what happened there. It's just little things. I'm not particularly unhappy with like how either of their stuff works out. There's kind of an epilogue in that series, and I think I appreciated everything that we got shown and not shown in that one. So we didn't get like a Harry Potter situation where it's like, and this is my child, Naruto, Sasuke, Jiraiya, and
oh my god.
You know, so it's like it gives you a nice little wrap up. You you get to see Yutaka and Vladimir like on tour together, and I cried. And, you know, see where everyone is at in high school, and just like a glimpse into like, are they in choir club, are they not, and that's it, you know. And I like that a lot of the characters didn't stay in choir. That was just like a transient middle school experience for them, and they found other interests. I think that's true to life. So,
like real life, reminds me of the whole last arc of Haikyuu, where like 80% of those characters just didn't play volleyball anymore because that's what they did in high school, and now they got real jobs.
Oh, and I don't have any problems with how Our Dreams at Dusk ended. I don't have any like loose hanging threads that I need wrapped up in that one. Next question. At Sealfant, in your opinion, has Kamatani's writing style changed much over their career? If so, what do you think has changed and what has remained consistent? I think you have a better grasp on that from having read Nabari no O, where I feel like they did a lot of growth from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, I think because just due to the fact of the length of Nabari and that being their very first work. It was really a growing experience. In saying that, the major themes and the major, I guess, hooks of that story was very consistent to what Kamatani has always done really well, and what I would say you would read their manga for. Art evolution is like the big one we talked about already. But writing wise, I mean, Nabari, obviously it has a different focus because it is an action shonen. Like, it has fighting, and it gets pretty full on violent throughout the entirety of it. But it's always done with a levity more so than, like, even Naruto, where, you know, they fight guys and people die, but you're like, okay, well, I didn't really care about that guy. Like, I don't know who that guy is. And they are seen as, like, that's maybe cruel to say about Naruto, but, like, you don't care about all of the people that Naruto and all of his friends beat over the course of the series. Like, you don't care about them.
You're gonna get a comment, about, like, an angry comment about from someone who absolutely loves every single character in Naruto.
I don't even remember, like, half the characters who were important in Naruto. I don't know how you could love, like, all of the side characters they beat, let alone... Oh my god. Anyway. This isn't about Naruto. This is about Nabari no. But I do think that just disregarding genre, disregarding the premise, writing style has maybe gotten a little bit, and it's something that came part and parcel with the art evolution, and art refinement, I guess, is that throughout the stuff that isn't said in a Kamatani title is just as important as what is said. And I think early volumes of Nabari present themselves as being pretty typical, like, exposition-y, like, setting the scene. But then also retroactively, after you finished, you notice how much has been groundwork for later stuff in that series, which isn't inherently very obvious. So I don't know, nothing much. I don't think they had a true, like, change of style or tone or anything. They were good when they started, and they're good now.
I think an interesting one, because I just remembered in one of the volumes of Shonen Note, there's, like, a really old one-shot from them that became the major inspiration for Shonen Note. I think it was called Octave. And it's a similar premise, kind of, but the characters are moved up into high school. Were they moved up into high school, or did they just look older because of the art style? I don't remember. But the main thing I noticed in that one is that the metaphors in it are pretty clunky, and there seems to be a lack of confidence in how far they can go with them. So,
yeah.
I thought that was interesting, because, again, it is so natural and seamless in their current works, but obviously, I feel like that kind of thing isn't something that you just start doing. I feel like that is, in itself, a craft that they have honed over time, and it was interesting to see sort of where they started with it. And Nabari as well, you know, I think because having read 2 volumes, the first 2 volumes are very straightforward shonen, and I feel like that comes from it being in a mainstream shonen magazine. G Fantasy. They may have been reined in by their editors, who knows? They may have reined themselves in. But I think that's interesting, especially from what G says about, and what I've seen you posting on Twitter, of, you know, the art really coming more into what we kind of expect from Kamatani.
Yeah.
But I think it's just, like, them evolving in the complexity of their visual language and becoming more confident in just how weird and out there they can get, while still not alienating audiences, hopefully. From @Evergarden Wall says, could we say that there are patterns or recurrent themes in their work? Are there any parallels you made between characters of their different works? And have you seen the trans flag color palette on Shonen Note Volume 1 cover art? Yes, yes, and absolutely yes. I also saw
yes
that big old rainbow on Volume 7 was also pretty alright. Yeah, I feel like we've talked...
We've discussed a lot of that. I mean, every at least the three main series that we've mentioned, the protagonist tends to be like a soft boy, middle school, like teen kid, with dark hair and big eyes, and just a cuteness, a cute son for you.
Here you are. I present you, cute son.
And that's great. That's great. You know what you're getting.
I will add him to my collection. Thank you. The three pictures that you put in the tweet for this show, that it's like the same expression and like the hair blowing the same way and all like the same-ish color palette. I thought that was kind of funny.
It was purposeful. It was purposeful.
Well, I know it was. I know it was purposeful, but it's just funny how similar those three images are.
Because those, for Shonen Note and for Our Dreams at Dusk, those are the Volume 1. For Nabari no O, that's Volume 14. That's the last volume. So you can see, like, the first volume's art is not that style. It's different. Again, appealing to the G fantasy, like, shonen action crowd. Similarly to how a lot of similar titles, stuff like Pandora Heart, stuff like Black Butler, they've got that sort of first volume look. And then you look at their last volumes, and it's like, is this the same series? Like, were we always reading this the same thing? Oh, okay, no, things have just changed over the course of a dozen volumes.
I really like that e-girl nose blush that Miharu has going on in this picture. That is definitely a Kamitani staple. They love that e-girl nose blush, and so do I, so... keep it up. The last question is from @Daniel3886538. Says, what inspires the art? I'm gonna go ahead and correct the pronouns here. I'm assuming you just didn't know. What inspires the artist to create their stories? Is there anything that makes them think, I want to make a story like this? I don't know them, so... I don't feel like I can answer that.
Those are questions for Kamatani themselves versus us. Talking about like similar themes, obviously identity is something that is important to them. I think they just they have an idea and they throw in a whole bunch of stuff that they enjoy, most notably choirs and soft boys. And choir,
Hiroshima, and ninjas.
and like quiet little towns and
cats,
sweet and supportive communities, really supportive mentors as well. Like, and then they just make that into a story. They just throw that all together.
I have to mention, like, in other ways, the art evolution is more gradual, but like the difference in quality of cat illustration between Volume 1 and Volume 2 of Nabari no O is stark. They were clearly like, I'm gonna draw cats until I can draw cats in between those two volumes. Because the first volume, his cat looks like a fucking alien. And then in the second one, it's adorable, so...
Yeah, Shiratama gets a big glow up. She's looking great. Also, not that I don't know if you know, but Kamatani wrote a doujin, which is it's a Nabari no O doujin. It's set sort of like in between chapters in volume 11, but it has, from my understanding, one of the Shonen Note characters is there. Like, it just
Ooh.
has a cameo from one of the Shonen Note
Ooh.
characters in there. So, I mean, if you're wanting to hunt that down, it goes for like dumb money for a
Buku
doujin.
dollars.
Not as much as not like a huge. It's like 3,500 yen or something, but like
Oof.
more more than like a typical doujin because it's many years old at this point now. It's probably a decade
and
old.
it's like a known name. It's like you go to the store and it's like all their Shunde doujins are like 4,000 yen, and you're like, ugh.
Ew. And let's not even get on started with the Yoshinaga doujin. I want their Rose of Versailles stuff so much, but that's $150, and not.
Oh god.
If you're lucky, like
Oof.
they're not paying those prices. But yeah, they do have they wrote they've written other doujin. They've written like Tokunranbu doujin as well, but
they
like
write a lot of Tokunranbu doujins.
But they've written doujin for their own work, which is about Nabari no O, but also has a Shonen Note character in there for lulz. And lots of cats, which is why I was reminded, like lots and lots of cats. So
they love cats,
yeah, obviously.
They love cats. So many of their like little interstitial images are just sketches they've done of cats, and I appreciate that. But yeah, I don't know what their purpose is in drawing because I don't know who they are. I've never met them, and I probably never will. I just like their stuff. So yeah, read Yuhki Kamatani, read Our Dreams at Dusk. That is the most easily accessible right now. Read Nabari no O. It is old, but it's not, as I understand it, all that hard to get. At least if you're in the US.
It's technically out of print, but it's one of those out of print titles that you can usually find like the entire series as a lot for not a huge amount. People seem to be selling like odd volumes of it all of the time because they find them secondhand for $1 or whatever. Like it's not a hugely popular title, unfortunately. So obviously there's not a huge demand for it. Hunt it down if you're interested.
Request Shonen Note wherever you can.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know if it was Spain or France got a release for it.
Somewhere
one of the European countries, which I'd have more luck reading comparatively to the Japanese volumes. But don't forget to send your license requests calmly to companies when they're asking for licenses, because that's one that I think people would like. I would like, and that's the only one person I care about. But I think Kamatani. But I do think that we have had 2 of Kamatani's works available in English, and one of them done very, very well, I'd assume, for 7 Seas. And I don't think Nabari did terrible numbers for Yen Press. So, I mean, there's hope. There's hope there that, there's an interest. And yeah, my long shot Buddhism one, never gonna happen. I want it though, but never gonna happen.
Yeah. So that is our first mangaka spotlight episode. Let us know what you think of the format. We already have like a few mangaka that we've got to choose from for, I don't know when the next one we were gonna do was, but The
Probably
format'll...
November.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. Look forward to Turkey Month being potentially our next mangaka spotlight. Let us know if there's any mangaka in particular that you would love to see us talk about. And, of course, all of your feelings, your love, your dislike, whatever, about Yuhki Kamatani. If you are watching this on YouTube, in the YouTube comments. Otherwise, Twitter. For either of us, we're both pretty active, so.
Thank you for listening, everybody. We also, for next month, our topic, it's spooky season.
Yay!
So, once again, we're talking about horror manga. Well, not once again. This is the first time we're talking about horror manga.
Yep.
But it's gonna be spooky. We're gonna talk about some stuff that's available in English. It's not going to be just a Junji Ito fest, because neither of us are particularly enamored with him.
Yeah, I mean, I love him as a person. He seems very cute.
But he's not... He'll get a mention, but I don't think that'll be the focus. Namely, because there's more horror manga out there, even in English, that exists. And people don't seem to know about it because Ito is the go-to, which is understandable, but also sad. So maybe send in your questions. As always, our links to each other's Twitter will be in the description below, both on Anchor FM and YouTube. Please be sure to subscribe to Ray at Whimsical Pictures if you have not. She is wonderful. And if you're not subscribed to my channel here, Simply G, and you are wanting to, follow the podcast on YouTube, then please consider doing so, subscribing, so you stay up to date. Otherwise, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, you can find us on pretty much every podcasting platform that exists right now, but especially Spotify and Anchor FM and Apple Podcasts, making it easy for you guys to get the latest episode when it is posted. Thank you guys so much for listening. Take care of yourselves. I hope everyone's staying safe, staying healthy, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye till then.
Bye.